Clara Dawson's hands trembled as she counted the coins for the third time. 3 pennies. Just 3 pennies stood between her and another day without food. The July sun of Cedar Creek, Texas burned through the general store window, but the cold spreading through her chest had nothing to do with temperature. She had not eaten in 4 days. Her vision blurred. Her knees buckled. And somewhere behind her, a stranger watched in silence as the young widow crumpled to the wooden floor. If you want to follow Clara's journey to the very end, please subscribe to my channel and leave a comment telling me which city you're watching from. I want to see how far this story travels. The stagecoach had dropped Clara Dawson at the edge of Cedar Creek 3 weeks ago with nothing but a carpet bag, her mother's cookbook, and a letter from a cousin who promised work and shelter. The cousin was gone. The shelter was a lie, and now Clara stood in Finch's general store with exactly 3 pennies pressed into her palm, trying to remember the last time she had eaten something other than the wild berries she found behind the abandoned shack she had been sleeping in. "You gonna buy something or just stand there blocking my counter?" Ezra Finch's voice cut through the thick summer air. The old shopkeeper wiped sweat from his forehead and fixed Clara with an impatient stare. "I apologize, Mr. Finch." Clara's voice came out smaller than she intended. "How much for the smallest bag of flour?" 15 cents. Same as yesterday. Same as the day before when you asked." Clara looked down at the 3 pennies. Her stomach cramped so hard she had to grip the counter to stay upright. "I see," she swallowed. "Perhaps I could pay you the rest when I find work. I am a good cook, Mr. Finch. I can clean. I can mend clothes. I ain't running a charity, miss." Ezra shook his head. "Every drifter that comes through here has got a story and a promise. You want credit, you go somewhere else." "There is nowhere else." "Then I reckon you got a problem." Clara felt the eyes of other customers on her back. The whispers started almost immediately. "That's the one," a woman's voice hissed. "The one living in that old Miller shack, like some vagrant." "Shameful," another agreed. "A woman alone, you know what that means." Clara's cheeks burned. She wanted to turn around and defend herself, explain that her husband had died of yellow fever 8 months ago, that she had spent every penny traveling to Texas on a cousin's false promise that she was not what they thought she was. But hunger had stolen her strength. Pride was a luxury she could no longer afford. "Please, Mr. Finch." The words scraped against her throat. "Just enough flour for 1 loaf of bread. I will pay you back. I swear it." Ezra's face softened for just a moment, then hardened again as he glanced at the other customers watching. "I said no. Now move along. You're holding up the line." Clara nodded slowly. She turned to leave, and the room tilted sideways. "Ma'am." Ezra's voice seemed to come from very far away. "Ma'am, you all right?" Clara tried to answer, but the words would not form. The heat pressed down on her like a physical weight. Her vision narrowed to a single point of light, and then there was nothing but darkness. Samuel Mercer had been loading feed sacks into his wagon when he heard the commotion inside the store. He was not a man who involved himself in town gossip or other people's troubles. 31 years of hard living had taught him that minding his own business was the safest policy. But something made him pause. Something made him set down the sack and walk toward the door. He pushed through just as the young woman collapsed. She went down hard, her body crumpling like a rag doll, those 3 pennies scattering across the wooden floor with a sound that somehow seemed louder than it should have been. Nobody moved to help her. The other customers stepped back, their faces showing more disgust than concern. "Someone ought to fetch the sheriff," one man muttered. "Can't have vagrants fainting all over respectable establishments." "Probably drunk," a woman sniffed. "Or worse." Sam looked at the woman on the floor. He looked at the scattered pennies. He looked at the hollow of her cheeks and the way her dress hung loose on her frame. He had seen hunger before. He had lived it. "She ain't drunk." His voice was quiet, but it carried. "She's starving." The room went silent. Sam crossed to where she lay and knelt beside her. Up close, he could see the evidence more clearly. The dark circles under her eyes, the slight tremor in her hands, even in unconsciousness, the careful mending on a dress that had been patched and repatched until barely anything of the original fabric remained. "Anyone know this woman?" he asked. "She's been staying in the old Miller place," Ezra said. His voice had lost some of its earlier harshness. "Came to town about 3 weeks ago. Don't know much else. She got family here." "Not that anyone knows of." Sam slid one arm under the woman's shoulders and another under her knees. He lifted her easily. She weighed almost nothing. "What do you think you're doing?" The scandalized voice belonged to Mrs. Harlow, wife of the bank manager and self-appointed guardian of Cedar Creek's morals. "Taking her somewhere she can rest. You cannot simply carry a strange woman through the streets. Think of the impropriety." Sam turned to look at Mrs. Harlow. His gray-blue eyes held no warmth. "Ma'am, this woman is unconscious from hunger in a room full of people who watched her fall and did nothing. I reckon impropriety is the least of our concerns right now." He walked out without waiting for a response. Maggie O'Brien's boarding house sat at the end of Main Street, a 2-story structure with a wide porch where old men gathered to escape the heat. Maggie herself was sweeping the steps when Sam approached with the unconscious woman in his arms. "Lord have mercy." Maggie dropped the broom immediately. "Samuel Mercer, what have you got there?" Woman collapsed in Finch's store. Hasn't eaten in days by the look of her. "Bring her inside. Quick now." Maggie led him to a small room at the back of the first floor, usually reserved for travelers who could not afford the regular rooms. She pulled back the thin quilt on the narrow bed. "Set her down gentle. I'll fetch some water and broth." Sam laid the woman on the bed with more care than he had shown anything in years. Her eyes were still closed, but her breathing had steadied. A strand of auburn hair had come loose from her braid, and without thinking, he brushed it away from her face. His hand jerked back as if burned. "What's her name?" Maggie called from the doorway. "Don't know? You carried a woman through the middle of town and you don't even know her name." Didn't seem important at the time. Maggie made a sound that might have been a laugh. "You're something else, Samuel Mercer. All these years you barely speak to anyone, keep to yourself out at that ranch, and today you decide to play hero." "I ain't playing anything." Sam moved toward the door. "She needed help. Nobody else was offering, that's all." "Uh-huh." Maggie's knowing eyes followed him. "Well, you can't just leave her here and disappear. Someone needs to watch her until she wakes, make sure she drinks something. I've got a dining room full of hungry boarders to feed. I'll pay for her room and her meals until she's strong enough to manage on her own." "That's not what I—" Maggie sighed. "Fine. But you're staying until she wakes up, and we figure out what's what. I won't have some poor girl coming to in a strange room with no idea how she got there." Sam wanted to argue. He wanted to leave the money and ride back to his ranch, where the only conversations he had to worry about were the ones with his horses. But Maggie was already gone, and the woman on the bed stirred slightly, a small sound escaping her lips. He pulled a chair close and sat down to wait. Clara woke to the smell of chicken broth and the sensation of something cool pressed against her forehead. For a moment, she did not know where she was. The last thing she remembered was the general store, the pennies in her hand, the floor rushing up to meet her. "Easy now." The voice was deep and unfamiliar. Clara's eyes flew open, and she found herself staring at a man she had never seen before. Dark hair, gray-blue eyes, a face weathered by sun and wind. He sat in a chair beside the bed, a bowl of broth in his hands. Clara scrambled backward, her heart pounding. "Who are you? Where am I? How did I—" "You're safe." The man held up one hand, palm out like he was calming a skittish horse. "My name is Sam Mercer. You fainted in the general store. I brought you to Mrs. O'Brien's boarding house." Clara's head spun. "I cannot afford a boarding house." "That's taken care of." "What do you mean taken care of?" "I mean I paid for your room, and your meals. You don't owe anyone anything." Clara stared at him. In her experience, nothing was ever free. People did not help strangers without expecting something in return. Her late husband had taught her that lesson well enough. Why? The word came out sharper than she intended. Sam's expression did not change. You were hungry. You needed help. Seemed simple enough. Nothing is ever simple, Mr. Mercer. Maybe not where you come from. He held out the bowl of broth. But right now the only complicated thing is whether you're going to eat this or let it get cold. Maggie O'Brien makes the best chicken broth in 3 counties, and she'll take it personally if you refuse. Clara hesitated. Her stomach cramped at the smell of the broth, demanding she take it, regardless of pride or suspicion. Slowly, she reached out and accepted the bowl. The first sip was almost painful, her shrunken stomach protesting even as it begged for more. She forced herself to drink slowly, aware of Sam watching her with those unreadable gray-blue eyes. "Thank you," she said finally, the words stiff and unfamiliar. "For the broth. And for bringing me here." Sam nodded once. "What's your name?" "Clara. Clara Dawson." "You got people in Cedar Creek?" "Mrs. Dawson?" The Mrs. caught her off guard. She glanced down at the simple band still on her finger, the one she had not been able to bring herself to remove. "Widow," she corrected. "And no, I thought I did. My cousin Thomas was supposed to be here. He wrote me letters, promised me work and a place to stay. But when I arrived, no one had seen him in over a year. Thomas Dawson's skinny fellow talked too much, had a gambling problem." Clara's heart sank. "You knew him. Knew of him. He left town owing money to half the businesses here. Skipped out in the middle of the night about 14 months back." Sam's voice was matter-of-fact, not cruel, but the words still cut. "I'm sorry. That must have been a hard thing to find out." It was. Clara set down the empty bowl, her hands trembling slightly. "I spent every penny I had to get here. I sold everything I owned except my mother's cookbook and the clothes on my back. And I arrived to find nothing. No cousin, no job, no hope." "How long since you ate before today?" Clara did not want to answer. The truth was humiliating. "Mrs. Dawson?" 4 days. She could not meet his eyes. "I found some berries in the woods, but nothing else. I have been trying to find work, but no one will hire a woman alone with no references and no connections. They look at me like I am—" She trailed off, but they both knew what she meant. A woman alone in the West was either a wife, a widow with means, or something respectable people did not discuss. Sam was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was carefully neutral. "I've got a ranch about 5 miles outside of town, 400 head of cattle, 20 horses, and a bunkhouse full of ranch hands who eat like they've never seen food before. My cook quit 2 weeks ago. Ran off to California with some fool notion of finding gold." Clara looked up sharply. "I ain't offering charity," Sam continued. "I'm offering work. You said you can cook. I need someone to cook for my men during the busiest season of the year. I'll pay fair wages, $3 a week plus room and board. You'd have your own quarters separate from the bunkhouse, and you'd answer to no one but yourself." "You don't know me." Clara's voice was barely a whisper. "You have no idea if I can actually cook or if I would steal everything you own the moment your back was turned." "No, I don't." Sam stood up, unfolding his tall frame from the chair. "But I know what it looks like when someone's been beaten down by circumstance and is still fighting to stay standing. I know what it looks like when someone's got pride enough to ask for work instead of handouts. And I know that old Ezra Finch is a hard man who don't let sentiment get in the way of business, and even he looked ashamed when you hit that floor." He picked up his hat from the bedside table and settled it on his head. "I'll be in town for another hour getting supplies. If you want the job, meet me at my wagon outside Finch's store. If you don't, no hard feelings. Either way, the room's paid through the week. You won't starve." He turned to leave. Mr. Mercer? Sam paused at the door, but did not turn around. Why are you doing this? And do not tell me it is simple. A man does not carry a strange woman through town and offer her a job just because it seems simple. What do you want? For a long moment, Sam did not answer. When he finally spoke, his voice was quieter than before. When I was 19, my whole family died of fever. Mama, Papa, 2 sisters. I buried them myself in the span of a week. Had nothing left but the clothes I was wearing and a mule too stubborn to die. Walked from Pennsylvania to Texas with no money, no plan, and no reason to keep going except spite. He finally turned to look at her, and Clara saw something in his eyes that she recognized. Pain that had been carried so long it had become part of the landscape. Somewhere along the way, a stranger gave me a meal and a place to sleep. Didn't ask for anything, didn't want anything, just saw someone who needed help and helped. I asked him why, same as you're asking me. You know what he said? Clara shook her head. He said someday I'd see someone in trouble and I'd understand. Said the only payment he wanted was for me to do the same when my time came. Sam tipped his hat. I reckon today's my time, Mrs. Dawson. What you do with it is up to you. He walked out, his boots heavy on the wooden floor. Clara sat in the narrow bed, surrounded by the smell of chicken broth and the lingering echo of his words. Outside the window, the July sun beat down on Cedar Creek, Texas, relentless and unforgiving. She had 1 hour to decide. Maggie O'Brien appeared in the doorway 10 minutes later, carrying a plate of biscuits and a fresh pitcher of water. I see you met Samuel Mercer, she said, setting down the food. Interesting man, that one. He offered me a job. Did he now? Maggie's eyebrows rose. At his ranch, as a cook for his men. Maggie sat down in the chair Sam had vacated. And what did you say? I did not say anything. I was too busy trying to figure out what he really wants. Maggie laughed, a warm rolling sound that filled the small room. Oh, honey, I've known Sam Mercer for 6 years, ever since he showed up in Cedar Creek, with nothing but that stubborn look in his eyes and a determination to build something out of nothing. You know what I've learned in all that time? Clara shook her head. That man means exactly what he says. No more, no less. If he offered you a job, it's because he needs someone and he thinks you can do it. There's no hidden agenda, no secret motive. Sam Mercer doesn't have the imagination for schemes. But people are talking. Clara could still hear the whispers from the general store. They think People in this town talk about everyone and everything. Maggie's voice hardened. Half of them are just bored, and the other half are so scared of their own sins they spend all their time looking for someone else to judge. You pay them no mind. Easy to say when you have a business and a reputation. Honey, I'm a 55-year-old Irish widow who runs a boarding house in Texas. You think I got where I am by worrying about what small-minded people whisper behind my back? Maggie leaned forward. Let me tell you something about Sam Mercer. That man has done more quiet good in this town than anyone knows. He pays his workers fair, treats them decent, and never turns away someone in genuine need. But he don't advertise it. Don't want the attention. Then why did he help me in front of everyone? Maggie's expression softened. Because you collapsed in the middle of a store full of people who should have known better, and not one of them lifted a finger. Sometimes even Sam Mercer can't stomach that kind of cowardice. Clara absorbed this in silence. Her whole body ached, but whether from hunger, exhaustion, or something else entirely, she could not tell. If I take the job, she said slowly, people will talk even more. A widow living on a ranch full of men working for a man she just met. They'll talk no matter what you do. Maggie stood up. Question is whether you're going to let their small minds determine the course of your life or whether you're going to do what you need to survive. She walked to the door and paused. That hour Sam gave you is almost half gone. Whatever you decide, make sure it's your decision, not theirs. Clara found Sam loading the last of his supplies into a weathered wagon outside Finch's general store. 2 horses stood patiently in the July heat, their coats gleaming with sweat. She had changed into the cleanest dress she owned, which was not saying much, and braided her hair more neatly. She still looked like what she was, a woman who had been living on nothing for weeks. But she held her head high as she approached. Sam saw her coming and stopped what he was doing. He did not smile, did not show any particular emotion. Just waited. "I have conditions," Clara said when she reached him. "I'm listening." "I want a lock on my door. Not because I think you or your men would try anything, but because I have not slept without one since my husband died, and I need to feel safe." "Done. I want Sundays off to attend church. I may not have much, but I will not lose my faith." "Fair enough." "And I want—" Clara hesitated. This was the hardest part. "I want to be paid weekly, not monthly. I know it is unusual, but I cannot. I will not be in a position where I am owed money and have to beg for what I have earned. My husband taught me what happens when a woman depends on someone else's goodwill for her survival." Something flickered in Sam's eyes. "Your husband. He was not a good man." Clara did not elaborate. She did not need to. "I will work hard for you, Mr. Mercer. I will earn every penny you pay me. But I will not be beholden. Not to anyone. Not ever again." Sam nodded slowly. Then he walked to the back of his wagon and pulled out a small box. He opened it, counted out some coins, and held them out to her. "Week's wages in advance." Clara stared at the money. "I have not done any work yet." "Call it a sign of good faith. Or call it practical. You'll need supplies, things for your quarters. Whatever a woman needs that I wouldn't think of. This way you don't have to ask." Clara's throat tightened. She wanted to refuse. Everything in her screamed that this was too much, too fast, that there had to be a catch. But the memory of those 3 pennies scattered on the general store floor was still too fresh. The memory of hunger so sharp it felt like being eaten from the inside. She took the money. "Thank you, Mr. Mercer." "Sam!" He turned back to the wagon. "If you're going to work for me, might as well use my name. Climb up. It's a long ride to the ranch, and that sun ain't getting any cooler." Clara climbed onto the wagon seat, her carpet bag clutched in her lap. Sam settled beside her and took the reins. As the wagon rolled out of Cedar Creek, Clara did not look back. There was nothing for her there, no family, no friends, no future. Whatever lay ahead could not be worse than what she was leaving behind. At least that was what she told herself. She had no way of knowing that the hardest part of her journey was just beginning. The wagon rattled along the dirt road for nearly an hour before Clara saw the ranch. Sam had not spoken much during the ride, and she had not pushed for conversation. The silence between them was not uncomfortable, just unfamiliar. Clara was not used to men who did not feel the need to fill every quiet moment with their own voices. "That's the main house up ahead," Sam finally said. "Bunkhouse is to the left. Your quarters will be the small building behind the kitchen. Used to be a storage shed, but I had it converted when Mrs. Patterson came to cook for us. She's the one who quit." "You mentioned she went to California." "Gold fever." Sam shook his head. "Woman was 62 years old and convinced she was going to strike it rich. Took everything she owned and headed west. Haven't heard from her since." The wagon pulled to a stop, and before Clara could climb down, a young man came running from the direction of the barn. "Boss, you're back early. We weren't expecting." He stopped short when he saw Clara. "Oh." "Billy, this is Mrs. Dawson. She's our new cook." Billy was maybe 19, with freckles scattered across his sunburned face and the kind of open expression that suggested he had not yet learned to hide his thoughts. Right now, those thoughts were clearly confused. "A cook? But I thought you said we were going to manage on our own until—" Plans changed. Sam climbed down from the wagon. "Help Mrs. Dawson with her things. Show her to her quarters. And round up the boys. I want everyone to meet her before supper." Yes, sir. Billy reached for Clara's carpetbag, his curiosity barely contained. Ma'am, if you'll follow me. Clara followed him toward a small building tucked behind what she assumed was the kitchen. Her mind was already racing, calculating what she would need to prepare a meal for however many men worked on this ranch. How many ranch hands are there, Billy? 8, ma'am. 9 if you count old Pete, but he mostly just tends the horses and complains about his joints. And what have you all been eating since Mrs. Patterson left? Billy's face reddened. Beans mostly. Some hardtack. The boss tried to make biscuits once, but they came out hard enough to shoe a horse with. Despite everything, Clara felt her lips twitch toward a smile. I see. Don't tell him I told you that, ma'am. He's a good man, the boss. Just can't cook worth a lick. The quarters were small but clean. A narrow bed, a washstand, a small stove for heat in the winter months, and Clara noted with relief a solid door with a lock already installed. Sam had remembered her condition. The kitchen's right through there, Billy pointed. Mrs. Patterson kept everything organized, so you should be able to find what you need. Supper's usually at 6, but we're flexible. Thank you, Billy. He lingered at the door, clearly wanting to ask questions, but not quite daring to. Clara took pity on him. Is there something else? Well, ma'am, where did the boss find you? He don't usually bring strangers back to the ranch, especially not... He trailed off, his face going even redder. Especially not women. I didn't mean any offense, ma'am. None taken. Clara set her carpetbag on the bed. Your boss found me collapsed in the general store in Cedar Creek. I had not eaten in 4 days, and I fainted in front of half the town. He carried me to the boarding house and offered me this job. That is the whole story. Billy's eyes widened. 4 days without food. It is not something I am proud of. No, ma'am, I didn't mean, I just meant that's awful. Nobody should have to go through that. His young face hardened with unexpected anger. And folks in town just watched you fall, didn't do nothing. That is correct. That ain't right. Billy shook his head. That ain't right at all. No, Clara agreed quietly. It is not. Billy seemed to reach some internal decision. Well, you're here now, ma'am. And the boys might be rough around the edges, but we look after our own. You need anything at all, you just ask. He tipped his hat and disappeared, leaving Clara alone with her thoughts and the weight of unexpected kindness. She did not allow herself to dwell on it. There was work to be done. The kitchen was larger than she had expected, well stocked, despite Billy's claims of beans and hardtack. Clara found flour, sugar, salt, preserved meat, dried beans, and even some canned vegetables. Within an hour, she had a pot of stew simmering and a batch of biscuits ready for the oven. The smell must have traveled, because she heard voices gathering outside long before the supper bell rang. Is that actual food, like real food? Smells like my mama's kitchen. I think I'm gonna cry. Clara wiped her hands on her apron and stepped outside. 8 men stood in a loose semicircle, their hats in their hands, their expressions ranging from hopeful to reverent. Sam stood slightly apart, watching with that unreadable expression she was beginning to recognize. Gentlemen, Clara said, supper will be ready in 10 minutes. I expect you to wash your hands and show some table manners. I will not have anyone eating like animals under my roof. There was a moment of stunned silence. Then a barrel-chested man with a thick gray beard threw back his head and laughed. Lord Almighty, boss, where did you find this one? Hank. Sam's voice carried a warning. I ain't complaining, I'm just saying we finally got someone who's gonna keep these heathens in line. Hank swept off his hat and executed a surprisingly graceful bow. Ma'am, I'm Hank Morrison. I've been working cattle for 40 years, and I ain't never been so happy to see a woman in my life. Present company accepted, of course. The other men introduced themselves one by one. There was Billy, whom she had already met, Hank the oldest, and apparently the unofficial second in command. 2 brothers named Marcus and Daniel, who looked barely old enough to shave. A quiet man called Joseph, who nodded politely but said nothing. A wiry fellow named Pete, Old Pete, though he looked no older than 50, who was indeed already complaining about his joints. And two others, Tom and Eddie, who seemed most interested in the biscuits. "Mrs. Dawson will be cooking for us from now on," Sam announced. "She's got her own quarters, and I expect every one of you to treat her with respect. Anyone who doesn't will answer to me. Understood?" A chorus of "Yes, boss" followed. "Good. Now wash up. Supper's waiting." The meal was a revelation. Clara watched with quiet satisfaction as 8 grown men devoured her stew and biscuits like they had never tasted food before. Even Sam, who had seemed so controlled and reserved, went back for seconds. "Ma'am," Hank said, pushing back from the table with a contented sigh, "if you can cook like this every day, I might just die happy." "Let's hope it doesn't come to that," Clara replied. "I would hate to have to dig graves after I've already done the dishes." Laughter rippled around the table. Something in Clara's chest loosened just slightly. For the first time in months, she felt almost safe. Almost. The feeling lasted until the next morning when Jake Harmon rode up to the ranch. Clara was in the kitchen preparing breakfast when she heard the hoofbeats. She looked out the window and saw a man on a black horse, dressed in clothes far too fine for honest ranch work. He sat in the saddle like someone who had never had to work for anything in his life. Sam emerged from the barn, his expression shifting from neutral to cold in an instant. "Harmon." "Mercer." The man dismounted with an easy grace. "Been a while." "Not long enough. What do you want?" "Can't a neighbor pay a friendly visit?" "You're not my neighbor. Your land is 15 miles south, and we both know you've never done anything friendly in your life." Jake Harmon laughed, but there was no warmth in it. "Still holding that grudge, I see. It's been 3 years, Mercer. Let it go. You tried to buy my land out from under me when I couldn't make the bank payment. Used your father's money to pressure the bank into calling my loan early. The only reason I'm still standing here is because I managed to scrape together every penny I had 2 days before the deadline. Business is business. Get off my property." Clara had moved to the doorway without realizing it, drawn by the tension in Sam's voice. Jake's eyes found her immediately, and his expression shifted to something that made her skin crawl. "Well, well, what do we have here?" He took a step toward the kitchen, ignoring Sam entirely. "I don't believe we've met. I'm Jacob Harmon. My family owns the biggest ranch in the county." "I am Mrs. Dawson." Clara kept her voice flat. "The cook." "Cook?" Jake's eyebrows rose. "That's a waste of a beautiful woman if I ever saw one. You should come work for me instead. I'd pay triple whatever Mercer's offering." "I am content where I am." "Are you living in a shack, cooking for a bunch of dirt-poor ranch hands?" Jake moved closer, his eyes traveling over her in a way that made Clara want to scrub her skin. "I could give you a real position. A room in the main house. Fine clothes. Anything you wanted." She said no. Sam's voice cut through the air like a whip. "Now get off my land, before I forget I'm a civilized man." Jake held up his hands in mock surrender, but his eyes never left Clara. "Think about my offer, Mrs. Dawson. Mercer here is barely keeping this place afloat. One bad season and he'll be finished. You don't want to go down with a sinking ship." He mounted his horse and rode off without looking back. Clara stood frozen in the doorway, her heart pounding. "I apologize for that." Sam's voice was rough. "Harmon's been trying to drive me off this land since I first staked my claim. He's used to getting what he wants. He seems like a dangerous man." "He is." Sam met her eyes. "Stay away from him, Clara. Whatever he offers, whatever he promises, stay away." It was the first time he had used her first name. Clara nodded slowly. "I intend to." But she saw the worry in Sam's face and knew that intentions might not be enough. The days fell into a rhythm after that. Clara rose before dawn to start breakfast, spent the morning cooking and cleaning, prepared a midday meal for whoever was close enough to eat, and ended each day with supper for the whole crew. It was hard work, but honest work, and for the first time in longer than she could remember, Clara felt useful. She also found herself watching Sam more than she intended. He was always the first one up and the last one to bed. He worked alongside his men instead of giving orders from a distance. He knew each of his cattle by sight and could tell which ones were ailing before any symptoms appeared. And he never raised his voice, never lost his temper, even when things went wrong, which they did, often. "We lost 3 head to the creek," Hank reported one evening, his face grim. "Currents running fast after those storms up north. Cattle got spooked, went in, couldn't get out." Sam absorbed the news without visible reaction. "Bodies. Downstream. We recovered 2. 3rd one's probably in Mexico by now. All right. Double the watch near the water. Nobody lets the herd anywhere near that creek until the current slows. That's going to cost us time. We need to move them to the north pasture before the end of the month. Then we'll be late." Sam's voice was calm. "I'd rather lose time than more cattle, or men." Clara watched this exchange from the kitchen doorway, struck by the quiet authority in Sam's voice. He was not a man who needed to prove himself. He simply was who he was. Later that evening, when the men had returned to the bunkhouse and the dishes were done, Clara found Sam sitting on the porch, staring out at the darkening sky. "May I join you?" He gestured to the empty chair beside him. "It's your porch, too." Clara sat smoothing her skirt over her knees. The summer heat had faded with the sunset, leaving the air almost pleasant. "You lost cattle today." 3. "I'm sorry." Sam shrugged. "It happens. Ranch work means accepting that some things are beyond your control. You do what you can, minimize the losses, and keep moving forward." "That sounds like more than ranch wisdom." He turned to look at her, and in the fading light, his gray-blue eyes seemed darker, deeper. "Maybe it is." They sat in silence for a while. Clara found herself thinking about all the questions she wanted to ask about his family, his past, how he had come to be the kind of man who carried strangers out of general stores. But something held her back. She knew what it was like to have wounds that were not ready to be examined. "Mrs. Patterson," she said instead. "What was she like?" "Old, stubborn, made the worst coffee I've ever tasted, but the men adored her anyway." A hint of a smile crossed his face. "She used to tell me I worked too hard and slept too little, said I was going to keel over one day, and she refused to be the one to find my body." "She sounds like she cared about you." "She did, in her way." Sam leaned back in his chair. "She's the one who convinced me to convert the storage shed into proper quarters. Said if I ever wanted a real cook, a young woman, she meant I'd need to offer decent accommodations. She was thinking ahead even then." "Did she know she was going to leave?" "No. The gold fever hit her sudden. One day she was making biscuits, the next, she was packing her bags and talking about nuggets the size of her fist." Sam shook his head. "I hope she found what she was looking for." Clara thought about her own journey to Texas. The false promises. The crushing disappointment. Sometimes what we're looking for isn't where we think it is. "No," Sam agreed. "Sometimes it finds us when we least expect it." Their eyes met. Clara felt something shift in her chest, something she was not ready to name. "It's getting late," she said, rising abruptly. "I should get some rest. Breakfast comes early." "Clara." She paused at the door. "You're doing good work here. The men respect you. And I—" He stopped, seemed to struggle with the words. "I'm glad you decided to stay." "So am I," Clara admitted. "Good night, Sam." "Good night." She went inside and locked the door behind her, her heart beating faster than it should have been. This was dangerous, she told herself. Feelings were dangerous. The last time she had trusted a man with her heart, he had crushed it beneath his heel and left her with nothing but bruises and regret. But Sam was not Henry. She knew that in her bones, even if her mind refused to believe it. She lay awake for a long time, listening to the sounds of the Texas night, and wondering what the morning would bring. What it brought was Maggie O'Brien riding up to the ranch in a rented buggy with a basket of food and a wealth of town gossip. "Clara Dawson!" Maggie called out as Clara emerged from the kitchen. "I came to check on you and make sure these men haven't worked you to death." "Mrs. O'Brien." Clara wiped her hands on her apron, surprised but pleased. "I wasn't expecting visitors." "Call me Maggie. And I wasn't expecting to hear that you'd survived a week on this ranch, so we're both full of surprises." She climbed down from the buggy with more energy than a woman her age should have possessed. "Now where can we talk without a dozen men listening in?" They settled in Clara's quarters, which Maggie inspected with a critical eye. "Not bad. Clean private, and I see Sam remembered the lock. Good man." She set her basket on the small table and began unpacking. "I brought you some things from town, a few necessities I thought you might need." Clara stared at the contents of the basket: soap, hairpins, a small mirror, a bundle of fabric that looked like it might become a new dress. Her throat tightened. "Maggie, I can't." "You can, and you will." Maggie's voice brooked no argument. "Consider it a welcome gift. Or consider it a loan if that makes your pride feel better. You can pay me back when you're able." "Why are you being so kind to me? You barely know me." Maggie sat down heavily in the room's only chair. "Because I was you once, Clara. A long time ago. Young, alone, broke, and too proud to ask for help. I nearly died of that pride before someone knocked some sense into me." Her eyes softened. "We women have to look out for each other. Lord knows the men mean well, but they don't always understand what we need." Clara sank onto the edge of her bed, overwhelmed. "Thank you." "Don't thank me yet. I also came with news, and you're not going to like it." Clara's stomach dropped. "What news?" "Jake Harmon has been talking about you in town, telling anyone who'll listen that Sam Mercer has installed a pretty young widow at his ranch for companionship." Maggie's lip curled with disgust. "He's painting quite a picture, and some of the town's more small-minded folk are eating it up." "But that's not true." "Of course it isn't. Anyone with eyes can see you're a decent woman doing honest work. But Jake Harmon doesn't care about truth. He cares about making trouble for Sam." Maggie leaned forward. "What do you know about the history between them?" "Only that Jake tried to take Sam's land 3 years ago." "It's more than that." Maggie's voice dropped. "Jake Harmon wanted to marry Elena Vasquez. She was the daughter of a rancher 2 towns over. Beautiful girl, kind heart. But she fell in love with Sam instead. They were engaged for nearly 6 months. Clara's heart stuttered. "Engaged?" "Until Jake spread rumors about her, same as he's doing about you. Called her virtue into question, said she'd been seen doing improper things with various men. All lies, of course. But Elena's family was old-fashioned, strict. They believed the gossip and broke off the engagement. Forbade her from seeing Sam ever again." "What happened to her?" Maggie's face darkened. "She married another man, someone her parents approved of. He moved her to New Mexico and she died 2 years later. Childbirth, they said, though there were whispers that her husband had a temper." She shook her head. "Sam never talks about it, but everyone knows it broke something in him. He hasn't courted anyone since." Clara sat in stunned silence. The pieces were falling into place. Sam's reserve, his wariness, the cold fury in his voice when Jake Harmon appeared. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because Jake is coming for you the same way he came for Elena. He can't stand that Sam has something he wants, even if it's just a good cook. And if he can destroy you in the process of hurting Sam, he will." "I'm not Elena." Clara's voice hardened. "I've survived worse than gossip." "I believe you." Maggie reached out and squeezed her hand. "But be careful. Jake Harmon plays dirty, and he doesn't stop until he wins. Don't give him any ammunition." After Maggie left, Clara stood alone in her quarters, her mind racing. She thought about Sam's face when he looked at her across the supper table. She thought about the warmth in his voice when he said her name. She thought about Elena Vasquez destroyed by lies and married off to a man who hurt her. She thought about her own dead husband, whose fists had taught her what happened when women trusted the wrong men. But Sam was not Henry, and he was not Jake Harmon. Sam was something else entirely. Something she had thought no longer existed in this world. A good man. And that terrified her more than any enemy ever could. That evening she found Sam in the barn brushing down his horse after a long day. He looked up when she entered, and something flickered in his eyes, something that made her breath catch. "Clara, is everything all right?" "Maggie O'Brien visited today. She told me about Jake Harmon." Clara paused. "She told me about Elena." Sam's hands stilled on the horse's flank. The silence stretched between them, heavy and painful. "I see." His voice was flat. "And what did she tell you?" "That you loved her. That Jake destroyed her with lies. That she died." Sam resumed, brushing his movements mechanical. "Elena was the best person I ever knew. Kind, gentle, strong in ways that most people never saw. And I let her down. I couldn't protect her from the whispers, couldn't convince her family that none of it was true. By the time I realized how bad things had gotten, she was already married and gone. That wasn't your fault. I should have fought harder." The words came out rough, scraped from somewhere deep. "I should have taken her away, married her somewhere else. Damn what anyone thought. But I was young and stupid, and I believed that truth would win out in the end." He laughed bitterly. "Truth doesn't mean much when men like Jake Harmon have money and power." Clara moved closer, drawn by the raw pain in his voice. "Maggie also told me that Jake is spreading rumors about me. About us." Sam's head snapped up. "What kind of rumors?" "The same kind he spread about Elena. That I am here for more than cooking. That we are—" She couldn't finish the sentence. Something dark crossed Sam's face. "I'll kill him." "No." Clara stepped forward, putting herself in his line of sight. "That's exactly what he wants. To provoke you, to make you do something reckless. He's trying to break you the same way he broke you before. He won't succeed. Not if we don't let him." Clara took a breath, steadying herself. "I am not Elena. I have already survived one man's cruelty, and I will not be destroyed by another's lies. But I need you to promise me something." "What?" "Don't send me away." Her voice wavered despite her best efforts. "Don't try to protect me by pushing me out. I've finally found a place where I feel safe, where I can do honest work and be treated with respect. Don't take that from me because of Jake Harmon's poisoned tongue." Sam stared at her for a long moment. Then he set down the brush and closed the distance between them. "I'm not sending you anywhere," he said quietly. "You belong here as long as you want to stay, and anyone who tries to hurt you will have to go through me first." Clara looked up at him, this man who had carried her out of a general store when she was at her lowest, who had given her work and dignity and a locked door to sleep behind. This man who had lost so much and still found it in himself to offer kindness. "Thank you," she whispered. Sam reached out and brushed a strand of hair from her face. The touch was gentle, almost reverent. "Don't thank me yet," he said. "We're just getting started." Outside, the Texas summer night wrapped around the ranch, and somewhere in the darkness, a wolf howled at the rising moon. The weeks that followed were the hardest Clara had ever worked, and somehow the happiest she had ever been. The summer heat bore down on Cedar Creek with a vengeance that July. The creek Sam had lost cattle to began to slow, then shrink, then reduce to a trickle that made every rancher in the county hold their breath. Water became more precious than gold, and Clara found herself rationing every drop in the kitchen. "We need rain," Hank said at supper one evening, his weathered face creased with worry. "Another 2 weeks of this, and we'll be hauling water from town." "I've already spoken to Reverend Whitfield," Sam replied. "He's organizing a community effort. Every ranch shares what they have. Nobody loses everything." "That's assuming everyone cooperates," Hank's tone made clear his doubts. They will. They don't have a choice. Clara listened to these conversations, understanding more each day about what it took to survive in this land. She also noticed the way Sam carried the weight of responsibility on his shoulders, how he slept less and worked more as the drought continued. One morning, she found him already saddled up before dawn. "Where are you going?" "North pasture. Need to check the water situation there." "You didn't eat breakfast." Sam paused, one foot in the stirrup. "I'll grab something when I get back." "No, you won't." Clara crossed her arms. "You'll find another problem that needs solving and forget about food entirely. That's what you did yesterday and the day before that." A flicker of something crossed his face. "You've been paying attention. It's hard not to when you're the one cooking meals no one eats." Sam lowered his foot and turned to face her fully. "Clara, I know you're worried about the ranch. I know the drought is bad. But you won't do anyone any good if you collapse from exhaustion." She held out a cloth bundle. "Biscuits and dried beef. Eat them on the ride, or I'll tell Maggie O'Brien that you're not taking care of yourself." "That's a low threat. I learned from the best." Sam took the bundle, and his fingers brushed against hers. Neither of them moved for a moment. "Thank you," he said quietly. "You're welcome. Now go. Your cattle are waiting." She watched him ride off, her heart doing something complicated in her chest. When she turned back toward the kitchen, she found Billy standing there with a knowing grin. "Not a word?" Clara warned. "Wasn't gonna say nothin', ma'am." But his grin only widened. The next Sunday, Sam insisted on taking Clara to church in town. "The men can manage for a few hours," he said when she protested. "And you said Sundays off was one of your conditions. I didn't expect you to escort me personally. Would you rather walk 5 miles in this heat?" Clara had no argument for that. The ride into Cedar Creek was quiet, but not uncomfortable. Clara found herself stealing glances at Sam's profile, the way his jaw set when he was thinking the calluses on his hands from years of honest work. "Stop staring," he said, without looking at her. "I wasn't staring." "You were. You do it a lot." Clara's face flamed. "I was just observing." Observing. She could hear the smile in his voice, even if she couldn't see it. "Is that what they call it where you come from?" "Where I come from, men don't notice such things." "Maybe the men where you come from weren't paying attention." Clara had no response to that. The church service was simple and sincere. Reverend Whitfield was a tall man with kind eyes and a voice that resonated through the small building like thunder. He spoke about community, about helping neighbors in times of hardship, about the strength found in faith and fellowship. Clara felt eyes on her throughout the service, some curious, some hostile, some merely speculative. Word of Jake Harmon's gossip had clearly spread. After the service, she and Sam were approached by a severe-looking woman in an expensive dress. "Mr. Mercer." The woman's voice could have frozen water. "I see you've brought your cook to services." "Mrs. Harlow." Sam's tone was equally cold. "Clara is a member of this community and has every right to worship here." "Of course she does." Mrs. Harlow's smile didn't reach her eyes. "I was simply surprised to see her, given the circumstances." "And what circumstances would those be?" "Well, the talk, of course. Surely you've heard what people are saying about the two of you." Clara felt her hands clench at her sides. "Mrs. Harlow, I assure you that my position at Mr. Mercer's ranch is entirely proper." "Oh, I'm sure you believe that, dear." The condescension dripped from every word. Young women in desperate situations often convince themselves that their arrangements are respectable. It's a survival instinct, I suppose. "That's enough." Sam's voice cut through the air like a blade. "Clara is a widow who lost everything and had the courage to start over. She works harder than anyone I know, and she has more dignity in her little finger than you have in your entire body. If you have nothing kind to say, I suggest you say nothing at all." Mrs. Harlow's face went white, then red. Well, I never... That's obvious. Sam took Clara's arm. Good day, Mrs. Harlow. They walked away, leaving the woman sputtering in their wake. Clara's heart was pounding, but not from anger. You didn't have to do that, she said quietly. Yes, I did. She'll make trouble for you now. She's married to the bank manager. Let her try. Sam's jaw was set. I'm tired of people thinking they can tear others down just because they have money and position. It's wrong and someone needs to say so. Clara stopped walking, forcing him to stop too. Sam? What? Thank you. Something softened in his face. You don't have to keep thanking me, Clara. Maybe I want to. They stood there for a moment closer than propriety allowed, the summer sun beating down on them, and the rest of Cedar Creek watching with avid interest. Clara could feel the weight of those stares, but for once, she didn't care. We should go, Sam said finally, before I do something that really gives them something to talk about. Clara wasn't sure if that was a promise or a warning. The following week, Sam decided it was time for Clara to learn to ride properly. You can't keep depending on wagons and other people to get around, he said. A woman alone needs to know how to handle a horse. I'm not alone. You know what I mean. Clara did know, and the implication made her chest tight. They started with a gentle mare named Bella, who was patient and forgiving of Clara's inexperience. Sam stood beside her, one hand on the horse's bridle, the other occasionally steadying Clara when she lost her balance. Relax your shoulders, he instructed. You're too tense. Bella can feel it. I'm sitting on a 1,000-pound animal. I think tension is appropriate. Bella weighs about 800 pounds, and she's the sweetest horse on the ranch. She won't hurt you. Easy for you to say. You've been riding since you could walk. Since I was 4, actually, and I fell off plenty of times before I got the hang of it. That's not reassuring. Sam laughed, and the sound did something to Clara's insides. She realized she had never heard him laugh before. Not really. Small chuckles, maybe. Brief moments of amusement. But this was different. This was joy. What? He asked, catching her expression. Nothing. I like your laugh. Sam went still. His hand, which had been resting on her knee to steady her, suddenly felt very warm. Clara. Boss. They jerked apart as Billy came running from the direction of the main road. Riders coming! It's Harmon. Sam's expression hardened instantly. How many? 4, maybe 5. They're armed. Get the men. Tell them to spread out but stay visible, and get Clara inside. I'm not hiding, Clara said immediately. This isn't a discussion. You're right, it's not. She met his eyes steadily. I told you I wouldn't be protected by being pushed aside. Whatever Jake Harmon wants, I'm not going to cower in the kitchen while you face it alone. Sam looked like he wanted to argue, but there was no time. The riders were already visible dust clouds rising in their wake. Jake Harmon rode at the front, flanked by 4 men who looked like they'd been hired for muscle rather than cattle work. He pulled up short when he saw Sam and Clara standing together, Hank and the other ranch hands spreading out behind them. Mercer. Jake's smile was all teeth and no warmth. I've come to make you an offer. I'm not interested in anything you're selling. You haven't heard it yet. Jake dismounted casually, as if he owned the place. His eyes found Clara and lingered. Mrs. Dawson, you're looking well. Ranch life agrees with you. Clara said nothing. I'll get right to the point, Jake continued. The drought is hitting everyone hard. Water-scarce cattle are struggling and smaller operations like yours are going to fold. It's simple economics. Your point? I'm prepared to buy your ranch, top dollar, more than it's worth honestly, but I'm feeling generous. Jake spread his hands. Take the money, Mercer. Start over somewhere else. California maybe. I hear they've got plenty of water there. The answer is no. You haven't thought about it. I don't need to. Sam's voice was iron. This land is mine. I built it from nothing and I'll die before I let you take it." "That can be arranged." The air went cold. Clara saw the ranch hands shift hands moving toward weapons. "Is that a threat?" Sam asked quietly. "It's an observation." Jake's smile never wavered. "The West is a dangerous place. Accidents happen. Fires, stampedes. A man alone can find himself in all sorts of trouble." "I'm not alone." Jake's eyes slid to Clara again. "No, I suppose you're not. Tell me, Mrs. Dawson, does your employer pay you extra for the more personal services? Or is that included in the room and board?" Clara moved before anyone could stop her. Her hand connected with Jake's face in a slap that echoed across the yard. The sound seemed to freeze everyone in place. Jake touched his cheek, where a red mark was already blooming. His eyes went flat and dangerous. "You'll regret that." "No, she won't." Sam stepped forward, putting himself between Clara and Jake. "You come onto my land, threaten my people, and insult a woman's honor. The only one who's going to regret anything is you." "Your people?" Jake laughed. "That's rich. You really think these men will stand by you when things get hard? When I make sure no one in this county will do business with you, when your cattle die of thirst and your creditors come calling. They already are standing by me, right now. Look around you." Jake did look, and for the first time, his confidence flickered. 8 men stood with Sam, their faces grim and determined. Even Billy, young as he was, had his hand on the pistol at his hip. "This isn't over," Jake said. "Yes, it is. Get off my land." Jake mounted his horse, his movements jerky with suppressed rage. "You've made a mistake, Mercer. And when you lose everything, the ranch, the cattle, and your precious cook, remember that I gave you a chance." He wheeled his horse and rode off, his men following. No one moved until the dust had settled. "Well," Hank said into the silence, "that was something." Clara's hand was throbbing. She hadn't realized how hard she'd hit Jake until now. "Are you all right?" Sam took her hand, gently examining her palm. "I should be asking you that. I may have just made things worse." "No." Sam's lips twitched. "You may have made things more complicated, but not worse. I've wanted to do that for 3 years. "Then why didn't you?" "Because a man hitting Jake Harmon is an excuse for a gunfight. A woman slapping him is just embarrassing." He met her eyes. "You were magnificent." Clara felt her face heat. "I was angry." "That too." Later that evening, after the tension had faded and the men had returned to their work, Clara overheard something that shattered the fragile peace she had found. She had gone to the barn to fetch eggs from the chickens that roosted there, and she heard voices from the other side of the wall. Jake Harmon's voice, she realized with a chill, and one of his men. "The widow's more trouble than I expected," Jake was saying. "But it doesn't matter. Mercer's weak spot isn't his land, it's her." "You sure about that, boss?" "I've watched him for weeks. He looks at her like she's the answer to every prayer he never said. Take her out of the picture and he'll crumble." "What are you thinking?" "I'm thinking a woman alone in that cabin used to be easy pickings before Mercer found her. Maybe she needs a reminder of how vulnerable she really is. A few rumors, a few threats, and she'll run. And Mercer will be too broken to fight." Clara pressed her hand to her mouth, her heart pounding. "There's something else," the man said. "I talked to some folks in town. The widow's husband wasn't just any man. He was a drunk and a bully. Beat her regular from what I heard. She's damaged goods Harmon. Mercer's just playing savior. He doesn't actually care about her, he pities her." "Even better. A man who pities a woman will only protect her so far. When he realizes she's more trouble than she's worth, he'll cut her loose." Clara couldn't breathe. The words echoed in her skull, each one a knife. Mercer's just playing savior. He pities her. She fled the barn, not caring about the eggs, not caring about anything except getting away. She made it to her quarters before the tears came hot and bitter burning tracks down her cheeks. She had been a fool. A stupid, desperate fool. Sam didn't care about her. He felt sorry for her. Just like everyone else. Just like Henry had felt sorry for her before the pity turned to contempt, and the contempt turned to violence. She was nothing but a project. A broken thing to be fixed. And when Sam realized she couldn't be fixed, he would discard her like everyone else had. Clara cried until she had nothing left. Then she dried her eyes, packed her carpet bag, and began to plan her escape. She would leave at dawn, before anyone woke, before she had to look Sam in the eye and see the pity she had somehow missed before her heart broke any further. But when she opened her door to check that the way was clear, she found Sam standing there, his hand raised to knock. "Clara, I was just coming to—" He stopped. His eyes took in her tear-stained face, her packed bag. "What's wrong? What happened?" "Nothing." She couldn't look at him. "I'm leaving." "Leaving? Why did someone hurt you?" "Did Harmon?" "No one hurt me." The words tasted like ash. I can't stay here anymore. I don't understand." "You don't have to understand." Clara forced herself to meet his eyes. "I appreciate everything you've done for me. The job, the wages, the kindness. But I'm not a charity case, Sam. I'm not a broken thing for you to fix." Sam's face went pale. "Is that what you think? That I see you as a charity case?" "I heard Jake Harmon talking." The confession spilled out before she could stop it. "He said you pity me, that you're playing savior because I'm damaged goods. And maybe he's right. Maybe that's all this has ever been." "Clara, I've been pitied before Sam. My husband pitied me before he started hitting me. My neighbors pitied me when they heard the screams. Everyone in my old town pitied me when I was too poor and too proud to leave. I cannot do it again. I will not do it again." "Stop." Sam's voice was rough. "Just stop." He closed the distance between them in 2 strides. His hands cupped her face, forcing her to look at him. "I don't pity you, Clara. I never have. The first time I saw you, you were counting pennies with shaking hands and you still held your head high. You were starving and desperate, and you still refused charity. You fainted in front of half the town, and you still had the dignity to be embarrassed about it." "Sam, I don't pity you," he repeated. "I admire you. I respect you. And God help me, I think I'm falling in love with you." Clara's heart stopped. "You're not damaged goods. You're the strongest person I've ever met. And Jake Harmon can go to hell because he doesn't know the first thing about who you are or what you mean to me." The tears came again, but these were different. These were relief and hope and something she was terrified to name. "I was going to run," she whispered. "I know. I was scared. I know that too." Sam's thumbs brushed away her tears. "But you don't have to run anymore, Clara. Not from me. Not ever." She kissed him then. Or maybe he kissed her. It didn't matter who moved first. What mattered was the way their lips met, desperate and tender all at once, a promise and a question, and an answer all wrapped together. When they finally broke apart, Clara was trembling. "Stay," Sam said. "Please." "I'll stay." Outside, thunder rumbled in the distance. The first storm of the season was coming, and nothing would ever be the same. The storm hit at midnight with a fury that shook the walls of the ranch house. Clara had barely slept. Her mind kept replaying the kiss, Sam's words, the way his hands had felt on her face. She lay in her narrow bed, listening to the wind howl and the rain hammer against the roof, and tried to make sense of everything that had changed. A pounding on her door made her bolt upright. "Clara!" Sam's voice urgent and strained. "I need you now." She threw on her dress and yanked open the door. Sam stood there, soaked to the bone, his face tight with fear. "The creek's flooding. We've got 200 head trapped in the north pasture. If we don't move them now, they'll drown. What can I do? Can you ride? Bella? I can ride Bella. Then get dressed. We need every hand we've got. 20 minutes later, Clara found herself on horseback in the middle of a storm that seemed determined to tear the world apart. Rain lashed her face. Lightning split the sky. And somewhere ahead of her, she could hear the panicked bellowing of cattle. "Stay close to me," Sam shouted over the wind. "Don't get separated." They rode hard toward the north pasture where Hank and the other men were already working to break down the fence line. The creek had become a river churning brown water that crept higher with every passing minute. "We've got maybe 30 minutes before the whole pasture floods," Hank yelled. "We need to drive them south toward the ridge." "Do it!" Sam wheeled his horse around. "Billy, Marcus, take the left flank. Hank, Joseph, you're on the right. Everyone else push from behind." Clara watched the men spring into action, each one knowing exactly what to do. She felt useless, uncertain, terrified. "Clara." Sam rode up beside her. "I need you to hold the gate at the south end. Keep it open, keep the cattle moving through. Can you do that?" "Yes." "Good. And Clara." He reached out and gripped her hand just for a moment. "Be careful." She rode to the south gate, fighting to keep Bella calm as lightning cracked overhead. The mare was skittish, but Clara talked to her in a low, steady voice the way she had seen Sam do. "Easy, girl. Easy. We're going to be fine." The first cattle came through in a rush, eyes rolling with terror, hooves churning the mud. Clara held the gate open, counting as they passed. 50, 100, 150. "Keep them moving," Hank's voice carried over the storm. "Don't let them bunch up." More cattle streamed through. Clara's arms ached from holding the gate. Her dress was plastered to her body, and she couldn't feel her fingers anymore. But she held on, and then she heard the scream. It was Billy. She knew it even before she turned to look. The young man was in the water, swept off his horse by a surge from the flooded creek. He was struggling, arms flailing, being carried downstream. "Billy!" Clara screamed. No one else had seen him. The men were focused on the cattle, fighting to keep the herd moving. By the time they noticed, it would be too late. Clara didn't think. She just moved. She kicked Bella into a gallop, racing along the bank toward the place where Billy was being carried. The water was moving fast, but not as fast as a horse at full speed. She pulled ahead of him, searching for a place where the bank dropped low enough to reach the water. There. A fallen tree, its branches trailing in the current. Clara threw herself off Bella and grabbed the tree, leaning out over the churning water. "Billy, grab my hand." He was barely conscious, choking on water, his face white with terror. But he saw her. He reached. Their fingers touched, slipped, touched again. Clara grabbed his wrist with both hands and held on. The current tried to rip him away. Clara felt her body sliding toward the water, her feet losing purchase in the mud. She was going to go in. She was going to drown with him. "Don't let go," Billy gasped. "I won't." And then there were hands on her waist pulling her back. Sam's voice in her ear, steady and strong. "I've got you. Pull." Together, they hauled Billy out of the water and onto the bank. He lay there coughing and retching, alive by the grace of God and Clara's stubbornness. "You damn fool woman," Sam breathed, crushing her against his chest. "You could have died." "He would have died if I hadn't." "I know." Sam's voice cracked. "I know." The storm raged for 3 more hours. By the time it finally passed, everyone was exhausted, soaked and covered in mud. But they had saved the herd. All 200 head were safe on the ridge, and not a single man had been lost. Billy found Clara at dawn, wrapped in a blanket near the kitchen fire. "Ma'am?" His voice was hoarse from the water he'd swallowed. "I don't know how to thank you." "You don't have to thank me. You saved my life. Nobody's ever—" He stopped, his young face working with emotion. My own mama left when I was 6, said I wasn't worth the trouble. And you, a woman I've known for a few weeks, you threw yourself into a flood for me." Clara reached out and took his hand. "You're worth the trouble, Billy. Don't let anyone ever tell you different." He nodded, tears mixing with the rain still dripping from his hair. "Yes, ma'am." When he was gone, Sam appeared in the doorway. "You heard that?" "I heard." He crossed to where she sat and knelt before her. "Clara, what you did tonight was reckless and stupid, I know. It was brave and selfless, and it showed every man on this ranch exactly who you are." He took her hands. "They'll follow you into fire now, all of them. You've earned their loyalty in a way that money never could. I didn't do it for loyalty. I know. That's what makes it matter." They sat together as the sun rose, watching the storm clouds retreat and the first light touched the sodden land. Everything smelled of rain and earth and new beginnings. "Sam," Clara said quietly, "what happens now? What do you want to happen?" "I want—" She stopped, drew a breath. "I want to stop being afraid. I want to believe that this is real, that you're real, that I'm not going to wake up and find it was all a dream." "It's real." Sam lifted her hand and pressed a kiss to her palm. "I'm real, and I'm not going anywhere. Jake Harmon isn't going to stop. He'll keep coming, keep trying to destroy what you've built. Let him try. I've got something worth fighting for now." The look in his eyes made Clara's heart stutter. "Sam, marry me." The words hung in the air between them. "What?" "Marry me, Clara. I know it's fast. I know we've only known each other a few months. But I've never been more certain of anything in my life." He cupped her face in his hands. "You make me better. You make this ranch feel like a home instead of just a piece of land. And I don't want to spend another day pretending I'm not completely in love with you." Clara's eyes filled with tears. "I'm still broken, Sam. I've got scars you can't see, and fears that might never go away. Then we'll be broken together, and we'll heal together. That's what marriage is supposed to be." "You really mean that?" "Every word." Clara thought about everything she had survived. The hunger, the beatings, the long years of loneliness and despair. She had come to Texas with nothing expecting, nothing prepared for nothing to change. And then Sam Mercer had carried her out of a general store and changed everything. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, I'll marry you." Sam kissed her, and she tasted salt and rain and hope. The news spread through Cedar Creek like wildfire. By noon, Maggie O'Brien had arrived at the ranch with a wagon full of supplies and a determined gleam in her eye. "A wedding," she announced, embracing Clara so tightly she could barely breathe. "I knew it. I knew it from the moment I saw him carry you into my boarding house. That man was done for, and he didn't even know it yet. Maggie, don't you Maggie me. We've got work to do. You'll need a dress, and a cake, and flowers, if we can find any that haven't drowned in this blasted storm." We were thinking something small, just the ranch hands and a few friends. "Nonsense. This town needs something to celebrate, and you need to show Jake Harmon and his ilk that you're not going anywhere." Clara hesitated. "I don't want to make things worse." "Honey, things can't get worse. Jake's already spreading every lie he can think of. The only way to fight back is to stand tall and prove him wrong." Maggie took her hands. "You deserve a real wedding, Clara. A beautiful day that you'll remember for the rest of your life. Let me give you that." Clara looked at Sam, who shrugged. "It's your choice," he said. "Whatever you want, I'll make it happen." Whatever she wanted. When was the last time anyone had asked her that? "All right," Clara said. "A real wedding, but nothing too fancy. I don't want to bankrupt the man before he's even my husband." Maggie laughed. "Leave everything to me." The wedding was set for 2 weeks, hence the first Saturday in August. It would take place in the little church in Cedar Creek, with Reverend Whitfield officiating and half the county invited. But first, There was Jake Harmon to deal with. He came to the ranch 3 days after the storm, riding alone this time. Sam met him in the yard, Clara at his side. "Mercer." Jake's eyes swept over Clara with barely concealed contempt. "I hear congratulations are in order." "You heard right. Marrying the help. How progressive of you." "You didn't come here to offer good wishes," Sam said flatly. "Say what you came to say and get off my land." Jake dismounted slowly, his movements deliberate. "I came to make one last offer. Sell me the ranch. I'll pay double what it's worth. You and your bride can start fresh somewhere else. No hard feelings." The answer is still no. "You're making a mistake. The only mistake I made was letting you walk away the last time you came here." Sam stepped forward. "Let me be clear, Harmon. If you come near this ranch again, if you spread one more lie about Clara or anyone else I care about, I will end you. Not in a duel, not in a fair fight. I will destroy you the same way you tried to destroy me, and I will enjoy every minute of it." Jake's face went pale, then red. "You wouldn't dare." "Try me." For a long moment, the two men stared at each other. Then Jake laughed, but there was no humor in it. "You'll regret this, Mercer. Both of you will." He mounted his horse and rode off without looking back. Clara watched him go, her heart pounding. "Is it over?" she asked. "No," Sam admitted. "But he knows now that I'm not afraid of him. That changes the game. What do? We live our lives. We get married. We build something stronger than anything he can tear down." Sam put his arm around her. "And we don't give him the satisfaction of seeing us scared." The wedding day dawned clear and bright, the first truly beautiful day since the storm. Maggie had outdone herself. The little church was decorated with wildflowers that Clara recognized from the fields around the ranch. The wooden pews were packed with people, some friendly, some curious, and a few openly hostile. But Clara didn't see any of them. She only saw Sam standing at the altar in his best suit, his gray-blue eyes shining with an emotion that took her breath away. "Dearly beloved." Reverend Whitfield began, his rich voice filling the church. "We are gathered here today to witness the union of Samuel Jacob Mercer and Clara Elizabeth Dawson." Clara walked down the aisle alone. She had no father to give her away, no family to stand beside her. But she didn't feel alone. Maggie was in the front pew crying happily. Billy and Hank and all the ranch hands were there, cleaned up and uncomfortable in their Sunday best. Even Ezra Finch had come looking slightly ashamed of himself. She reached the altar and took Sam's hands. They were rough and calloused and steady, and they felt like home. "Do you, Samuel Jacob Mercer, take this woman to be your lawfully wedded wife, to have and to hold from this day forward, for better, for worse, for richer, for poorer, in sickness and in health, until death do you part?" "I do." "And do you, Clara Elizabeth Dawson, take this man to be your lawfully wedded husband, to have and to hold from this day forward, for better, for worse, for richer, for poorer, in sickness and in health, until death do you part?" Clara looked into Sam's eyes and saw her future. It wouldn't be easy. There would be struggles and hardships and days when everything seemed impossible. But there would also be love. Real, honest, unconditional love. "I do." "Then by the power vested in me, I pronounce you husband and wife. You may kiss the bride." Sam kissed her, and the church erupted in applause. Clara felt tears streaming down her face, but for the first time in longer than she could remember, they were tears of pure, uncomplicated joy. The reception was held at Maggie's boarding house. There was food and music and dancing, and Clara found herself passed from partner to partner as the ranch hands took turns spinning her around the room. "You clean up good, ma'am?" Billy said, his face red with exertion and happiness. "I mean, you always look good, but today you look like a bride," Clara suggested. "Like a queen." She kissed his cheek, and he turned even redder. As the evening wore on, Clara found herself standing on the porch, looking out at the gathering twilight. The celebration continued inside, laughter and music spilling out into the warm August air. Sam appeared beside her, 2 glasses of punch in his hands. Mrs. Mercer. The name sent a thrill through her. Mr. Mercer. How does it feel? Like a dream I'm afraid to wake up from. Then don't wake up. He handed her a glass and wrapped his arm around her waist. Stay in the dream forever. Is that possible? We'll make it possible. They stood together, watching the stars come out one by one. In the distance, a coyote howled, and somewhere in the hills, cattle lowed softly. I used to think I was cursed, Clara said quietly. That I was destined to be alone and miserable for the rest of my life. That happiness was something other people had, never me. And now I think maybe the curse was just a long, dark road that led me here, to this place, to you. She looked up at him. I wouldn't change a single thing, Sam. Not the hunger, not the fear, not even my first marriage, because all of it brought me to you. Sam set down his glass and took her face in his hands. I love you, Clara Mercer. I love you too. He kissed her, soft and sweet and full of promise. And then a gunshot shattered the night. Clara screamed as Sam jerked back, clutching his shoulder. Blood seeped through his fingers, dark against the white of his shirt. Sam, get inside. He pushed her toward the door. Get inside now. More shots rang out. People were screaming, running, diving for cover. Clara caught a glimpse of riders in the darkness, at least half a dozen, their faces covered with bandanas. Jake Harmon, someone shouted. It's Harmon's men. Clara grabbed Sam's good arm and helped him through the door. Maggie was already there, clearing a space on a table. Lay him down. Let me see the wound. The bullet had gone through the fleshy part of Sam's shoulder, missing bone and artery by inches. He was pale and sweating, but his eyes were clear. I'm all right, he said through gritted teeth. It's just a graze. It's not just a graze, you stubborn fool. Maggie pressed a cloth against the wound. Clara, get me hot water and clean bandages. We need to stop the bleeding. Clara moved without thinking, her hands steady, even as her heart raced. She boiled water, tore clean cloth into strips, fetched whiskey for the pain. She worked alongside Maggie like they had done this 100 times before. Outside, the gunfire had stopped. Hank came through the door, his face grim. They're gone. Rode off toward the hills. Anyone else hurt? Billy took a bullet in the leg. Nothing serious. Everyone else is shaken but whole. And the riders? We recognize 2 of them. Harmon's men for sure. Hank's jaw tightened. This was meant to be a message. Then we send one back. Sam tried to sit up and winced. Get the sheriff. Tell him what happened. Jake Harmon just made the biggest mistake of his life. Sam, you need to rest. I'll rest when Harmon is in jail. His eyes found Clara's. Are you all right? Am I all right? You're the one who got shot. Just a graze. He managed a weak smile. I've had worse from ornery cattle. This isn't funny. No, it's not. His expression sobered. But I'm alive. We're all alive. And Jake Harmon just gave us everything we need to bring him down. Clara didn't understand at first. Then she saw the cold calculation in Sam's eyes, and she realized that beneath the gentle rancher was a man who knew how to fight. What are you going to do? What I should have done 3 years ago. Sam reached for her hand with his uninjured arm. I'm going to make sure Jake Harmon never hurts anyone again. The sheriff arrived at midnight. By dawn, warrants had been issued for Jake Harmon and his men. By noon, Jake was in custody, caught trying to flee across the county line. Clara stood on the porch of the boarding house, Sam beside her with his arm in a sling, and watched as the man who had tried to destroy them was led away in chains. It's over, she whispered. Not quite. Sam squeezed her hand. But the worst is behind us. Jake's eyes found them as he passed. The hatred in his gaze was so intense that Clara took an involuntary step back. But Sam stood firm, his expression revealing nothing. "You haven't won Mercer," Jake spat. "This isn't over." "Yes, it is." Sam's voice was calm. "You made your choices, Harmon. Now you live with them." Jake was dragged away, still shouting threats that grew fainter with distance. Clara sagged against Sam's side, exhausted and relieved, and still not quite believing it was real. "Take me home," she said. "Your wish is my command, Mrs. Mercer." They rode back to the ranch in silence, the summer sun warming their backs and the future stretching out before them like an endless horizon. There would be challenges ahead: rebuilding, recovering, learning to be husband and wife in all the ways that mattered. But they would face it together. And that made all the difference. The first weeks of marriage were harder than Clara had expected, but not in the way she had feared. Sam's wound healed slowly. The bullet had done more damage than Maggie's initial assessment suggested, and there were nights when fever gripped him so hard that Clara thought she might lose him before their life together had truly begun. She stayed by his bedside through the worst of it, bathing his forehead with cool water, forcing broth between his cracked lips, praying to a God she had almost stopped believing in. "You can't die," she whispered fiercely during one particularly bad night. "I won't let you. We didn't come this far for you to give up now." Sam's eyes fluttered open, glazed with fever. "Not giving up. Just resting. You've been resting for 3 days. It's time to fight. Bossy woman. You married me. You knew what you were getting." A ghost of a smile crossed his face. "Best decision I ever made." The fever broke the next morning. Clara wept with relief, her tears falling onto Sam's chest as he held her with his good arm. "Told you I wasn't going anywhere," he said. "Don't ever scare me like that again." "I'll do my best." Recovery was slow but steady after that. Sam chafed at being confined to bed, then to the house, then to light work only. Hank and the other men managed the ranch with quiet competence, reporting to Clara each evening on the day's progress. "You've got good men," she told Sam one evening as they sat on the porch watching the sun set. "They'd follow you anywhere." "They'd follow you too. After what you did in that flood, they consider you one of their own." "I just did what needed doing." "That's what makes it matter." Sam reached for her hand. "Clara, there's something I've been meaning to talk to you about." "That sounds ominous." "It's not. At least I hope it's not." He turned to face her fully. "This ranch, everything I've built here, it's not just mine anymore. It's ours. I want to make that official. We're married. It's already official. I mean legally. I want to put your name on the deed, equal partners in everything." Clara stared at him. In her experience, men didn't share property with their wives. Legally, everything she owned, not that she had owned anything, belonged to her husband the moment they married. "Sam, you don't have to." "I know I don't have to. I want to." His gray-blue eyes were steady. "You're not just my wife, Clara. You're my partner. And I want the world to know it." The tears came before she could stop them. "Henry never would have. He wouldn't even let me have my own money. Said a wife didn't need such things." "Henry was a fool and a coward. I'm neither." Sam lifted her hand and kissed it. "Say yes." "Yes, 1,000 times yes." They filed the papers the following week. The clerk at the county office looked shocked, and more than a few whispers followed them out of the building. But Clara held her head high, Sam's hand warm in hers, and let the gossips talk. She was Clara Mercer now, equal partner in the Mercer Ranch, and nothing anyone said could take that from her. As summer faded into autumn, life settled into a rhythm that felt almost peaceful. The drought had broken with the storm, and the land was recovering. The cattle were healthy, the crops were growing, and the ranch was thriving in ways it hadn't in years. But Clara knew that peace in the West was always temporary. The news came in October, carried by Reverend Whitfield himself. He rode up to the ranch one afternoon, his kind face grave with concern. Jake Harmon escaped from jail last night, he said without preamble. Killed a deputy on his way out. The sheriff's got a posse looking for him, but so far they haven't found anything. Clara felt the blood drain from her face. Sam's arm came around her steady and strong. Where do they think he's headed? Sam asked. No one knows for certain. But Sam, his father, disowned him after the arrest. Jake's got nothing left to lose, and we all know who he blames for his troubles. He'll come here. Most likely. Sam nodded slowly, his jaw set. Thank you for the warning, Reverend. I appreciate you riding all this way. I wish I had better news. The Reverend hesitated. Sam, Clara, if you wanted to leave for a while, no one would think less of you. Go to San Francisco or Sacramento. Wait until Jake is caught. Run, you mean? Sam's voice was flat. Survive. Sometimes running is the wisest choice. Not this time. Sam looked at Clara. This is our home. We're not leaving it. Clara thought about all the time she had run. From her first marriage, from the creditors after Henry died, from her own fear and shame. She was tired of running. I agree with Sam, she said. We stay. The Reverend sighed, but there was respect in his eyes. Then I'll pray for your safety. And if you need anything at all, you know where to find me. After he left, Sam gathered the men and explained the situation. No one seemed surprised, and no one suggested leaving. We'll set up a watch rotation, Hank said. 4-hour shifts, 2 men at a time. No one rides alone until this is over. Billy, I want you near the house. Sam looked at the young man. If anything happens, you get Clara to safety. That's your only job. Yes, sir? Sam, Clara began. Don't argue with me on this, please. The look in his eyes stopped her protest. She nodded. The waiting was the hardest part. Days passed with no sign of Jake Harmon. The tension wore on everyone's nerves, turning the men irritable, and Clara sleepless. She found herself jumping at shadows, flinching at unexpected sounds. He's playing with us, she said one night, unable to hide her frustration. He wants us scared and exhausted before he makes his move. Probably, Sam agreed. But that works both ways. He's out there alone, running from the law with no resources and no allies. Every day that passes makes him more desperate. Desperate men do dangerous things. So do cornered women. Sam pulled her close. Whatever happens, we face it together. Remember. I remember. Jake came on a Tuesday. Clara was alone in the kitchen preparing the midday meal when she heard footsteps on the porch. Not Sam's familiar tread or Billy's eager bounce. These were slow, deliberate, designed to intimidate. She reached for the rifle Sam had insisted she keep nearby. I wouldn't do that if I were you. Jake Harmon stood in the doorway, a pistol pointed directly at her heart. He looked terrible, gaunt, unshaven, wild-eyed, with something that might have been madness. Mrs. Mercer. He smiled, and it was the most frightening thing Clara had ever seen. We meet again. The men will have heard you coming. They'll be here any minute. No, they won't. I've been watching this ranch for days. I know your husband took most of them to the north pasture this morning. The ones who stayed are occupied. Clara's blood ran cold. What did you do? Nothing permanent. Yet. Jake stepped further into the kitchen. But that depends entirely on you. What do you want? What I've always wanted. Sam Mercer destroyed. Jake's voice cracked with barely controlled rage. He took everything from me. My reputation, my future. Elena chose him. That's not Sam's fault. She would have chosen me if he hadn't interfered. We were meant to be together, and he stole her from me. Clara saw it now, the delusion that had festered in Jake's mind for years. He had rewritten history, convinced himself that Elena had been taken rather than lost, and nothing she said would change his belief. What do you want me to do? She asked carefully. Write a note. Tell Sam you're leaving him. Tell him you never loved him, that it was all a lie. Then come with me." "Come with you where? Does it matter?" Jake's laugh was hollow. "Mexico, maybe. Somewhere far from here where I can start over. With you as my wife. I'm already married. Marriages can be ended." The pistol never wavered. One way or another. Clara's mind raced. She could scream, but Jake would shoot her before anyone could help. She could try to grab the rifle, but he was too close. She could comply, buy time, hope for rescue. Or she could fight. "No," she said. Jake blinked. "What?" "I said no. I'm not writing any note and I'm not going anywhere with you." Clara's voice was steady, even as her hands trembled. "You can shoot me if you want, but I won't help you destroy Sam. You'd rather die. I'd rather die than spend 1 minute as your prisoner. I've been a prisoner before, Jake, to a man who thought he owned me, who beat me and belittled me and made me feel worthless. I survived that, and I will not go through it again." Something flickered in Jake's eyes. Surprise, maybe, or confusion. He had expected her to be afraid to comply. He didn't know what to do with defiance. "You're bluffing." "Try me." Jake raised the pistol, and then everything happened at once. The kitchen door crashed open. Sam burst through his face, a mask of fury, followed by Billy and Hank. Jake spun toward the new threat, his pistol swinging away from Clara. She didn't think. She grabbed the rifle and swung it like a club, connecting with Jake's arm just as he fired. The shot went wild, shattering a window. Jake screamed in pain and dropped the pistol. Sam was on him before he could recover, driving him to the ground with the full force of his body. They struggled, fists flying, Jake fighting with the desperation of a man with nothing left to lose. "Sam!" Clara screamed as Jake's hands found Sam's throat. Billy moved like lightning, bringing the butt of his rifle down on Jake's skull. The man went limp. For a moment, nobody moved. Then Sam rolled off Jake's unconscious body, gasping for breath. "Are you hurt?" Clara dropped to her knees beside him. "Sam, are you hurt?" "I'm fine." His voice was hoarse, his throat already bruising. "Are you?" "I'm fine." "You were supposed to scream if there was trouble. That was the plan." "He would have shot me." "So you decided to argue with him instead. It worked, didn't it?" Sam stared at her for a long moment. Then he started to laugh, great heaving laughs that shook his whole body. "God, I love you," he managed between gasps. "You impossible, stubborn, brave woman." Clara laughed too, the hysteria of relief bubbling up from somewhere deep inside. They held each other on the kitchen floor, laughing and crying and alive. Behind them, Hank cleared his throat. "Not to interrupt, boss, but what do you want us to do with Harmon?" "Tie him up," Sam said without looking away from Clara. "The sheriff can deal with him. I'm done." Jake Harmon was taken into custody that afternoon. This time he would face not just assault charges, but murder, escape, and attempted kidnapping. He would hang before Christmas. Clara didn't attend the execution, neither did Sam. Some things were better left in the past. The months that followed were a revelation. Without the shadow of Jake Harmon hanging over them, Clara and Sam were free to simply live, to wake up each morning without fear, to plan for the future instead of just surviving the present. Spring brought new calves and new hope. Summer brought a bumper crop and enough rain to fill the creek to overflowing. And autumn brought something neither of them had dared to hope for. "I'm pregnant." Sam's face went through about 7 different expressions in the space of 3 seconds. Shock, disbelief, joy, terror, and finally overwhelming love. We're going to have a baby." "Yes." Clara was crying again. Happy tears that she had become quite familiar with since marrying Sam. "Are you pleased? Pleased?" Sam swept her up in his arms and spun her around laughing. "I'm the happiest man in Texas, maybe in the whole country. Put me down before you make me dizzy." He set her down, but didn't let go, his arms wrapped around her. His forehead pressed against hers. "A baby," he whispered. "Our baby." our baby. The pregnancy was hard. Clara was sick for the first 3 months, exhausted for the next 3, and uncomfortable for the final 3. But she never complained because every kick, every flutter was proof that something miraculous was happening inside her. Maggie visited often, bringing food and advice, and the kind of practical wisdom that came from helping dozens of women through childbirth. "You're strong," she told Clara one afternoon. "Stronger than you know, and that baby is going to be lucky to have you as a mother." "What if I don't know what I'm doing?" "Nobody knows what they're doing. We all figure it out as we go." Maggie squeezed her hand. "But I'll tell you this, any woman who can face down Jake Harmon with nothing but defiance and a rifle can handle anything motherhood throws at her." The baby came on a March morning after a labor that lasted nearly 18 hours. Clara thought she might die from the pain, but Sam was there holding her hand, telling her she could do this. She was almost there, just a little more. And then there was a cry, thin and reedy, and the most beautiful sound Clara had ever heard. "A girl," Maggie announced, placing the squalling bundle in Clara's arms. "A perfect, healthy girl." Clara looked down at the tiny face, the rosebud mouth, the eyes that would probably turn gray-blue like her father's. "Hello, little one," she whispered. "I'm your mama." Sam's arms came around them both, tears streaming down his weathered face. "What should we name her?" he asked. Clara thought about all the women who had helped her along the way. Maggie, who had taken a chance on a stranger. Reverend Whitfield's wife, who had organized meals for Clara during the pregnancy. Even old Mrs. Patterson, wherever she was, who had unknowingly prepared the way for Clara to come into Sam's life. "Hope," she said. "Her name is Hope. Hope Mercer." Sam kissed his wife's forehead, then his daughter's. "It's perfect." 5 years later, Clara stood on the porch of the ranch house, expanded now with a new wing for the nursery and guest rooms for visitors, and watched her husband teaching their daughter to ride. "Keep your heels down, sweetheart," Sam called. "That's it. You're doing great." Hope giggled, her auburn braids bouncing as the little pony trotted in a circle. She was fearless, that one just like her mother. Clara's hand moved to her swelling belly, where their second child, a boy she was certain was kicking with enthusiasm. Life was good, better than good. Life was everything she had never dared to dream. "Mrs. Mercer." She turned to find Billy standing at the foot of the porch steps. He was a man now, 24 years old, about to be married to Ezra Finch's daughter. The boy she had pulled from the flood had become one of the steadiest, most reliable men in the county. "There's someone here to see you, a woman. She's in a bad way." Clara followed him to the front of the house where a wagon had stopped. A young woman sat in the driver's seat, her face bruised, her dress torn, her eyes hollow with despair. Clara knew that look. She had worn it herself not so long ago. "Ma'am," she said gently. "Are you all right?" The woman looked at her with eyes that had seen too much. "I'm sorry to bother you. I didn't know where else to go. My husband, I had to leave. I had to get out. But I don't have any money, and no one in town would help me, and—" She broke down, sobs racking her thin frame. Clara climbed up onto the wagon seat and put her arms around the stranger. "Hush now. You're safe. Whatever happened, you're safe here. I don't have anything to offer. I can't pay for food or lodging or— You don't have to pay for anything." Clara pulled back and looked into the woman's eyes. "My name is Clara Mercer. This is my ranch, and you're welcome here for as long as you need." "But why, you don't even know me." Clara thought about a general store in Cedar Creek, about 3 pennies and empty cupboards, about a stranger who had seen her at her lowest and offered help without asking for anything in return. "Because someone helped me once," she said, "when I had nothing and no one and nowhere to go. He said the only payment he wanted was for me to do the same someday." She smiled. "I reckon today is that day." The woman stared at her for a long moment. Then fresh tears spilled down her cheeks, but these were different. These were tears of hope. "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank you." Sam appeared at Clara's side. Hope perched on his shoulders. He took in the situation with a single glance and nodded. "Billy helped Mrs. Williams," the woman supplied. "Sarah Williams. Help Mrs. Williams get settled in the guest room. Make sure she has everything she needs." "Yes, sir." As Billy led Sarah toward the house, Sam turned to Clara. There was pride in his eyes, and love, and something deeper that made her heart ache with happiness. "You're continuing the circle," he said. "We both are." He kissed her there, in front of God, and everyone, while their daughter giggled and the Texas sun beat down on the land they had built together. "Papa?" Hope tugged at his hair. "You're supposed to teach me to ride, not kiss Mama." "I'm doing both." "That's silly." "Maybe, but it's also love." Later that evening, after Sarah had been fed and settled, and Hope had finally fallen asleep, Clara and Sam sat on the porch in their usual spot. The stars were coming out, scattered across the sky like diamonds on velvet. "Do you ever think about how it started?" Clara asked. "You mean the general store? The 3 pennies? All of it. What if you hadn't been there that day? What if you hadn't looked through the window? What if you had decided it wasn't your business? Then I would have missed out on the best thing that ever happened to me." Sam took her hand. "But I don't think about what ifs. I think about what is. And what is perfect." Clara leaned her head against his shoulder. "I used to count pennies and pray for just enough to survive. Now I count blessings and wonder what I did to deserve them." "You survived. That's what you did. You kept going when everything told you to stop. You held on to your dignity when the world tried to strip it away. And you let someone love you even when you were afraid." That was the hardest part. "I know." Sam kissed the top of her head. "But you did it anyway. That's what makes you remarkable." The baby kicked, and Clara placed Sam's hand on her belly so he could feel it too. New life growing inside her. New hope for the future. "I love you, Sam Mercer." "I love you too, Clara Mercer. Today, tomorrow, and every day after that." The stars wheeled overhead, ancient and eternal. Somewhere in the darkness, a coyote howled. And on a ranch in Texas, a woman who had once had nothing fell asleep in the arms of the man who had given her everything. Not with money, not with grand gestures, but with kindness. Simple, quiet, unconditional kindness. And that in the end was worth more than all the gold in California. Because Clara Dawson had learned the greatest truth the West had to offer, that home was not a place, but a choice. That love was not a feeling, but an action. And that the smallest act of compassion could change a life forever. She had walked into Cedar Creek with 3 pennies and a broken heart. She would leave behind a legacy of courage, kindness, and unshakable hope that would echo through generations. And she would never ever count pennies again.